Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to wait a couple more moments as people get into the webinar room, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and I hope you are all doing well. We are going to be talking about the 7 departments that LGO works with to grant the MS MBA dual degree from MIT. So we'll be getting into a lot of details about each department and what you should be considering when you're thinking of applying to LGO in each department. So I am Sharona Bollinger with the LGO admissions team, and I'm joined today by my colleague Eileen Jacob, and we will be joined by some of our current students a little later, a few of the LGO 23s who are currently on their internship. But first, we're going to do a brief overview of each department before introducing the students. So if you have any questions along the way, please use the Q&A and we will try to answer as many questions as we can. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted to our YouTube channel. So if you continue, you can continue to reference it later. So if you have any memories of this webinar, you can always go back and look at the slides again. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Just in case this is your first LGO event and you are still learning about the structure of the program, LGO is a unique dual degree program that grants an MS and an MBA from MIT's School of Engineering and the Sloan School of Management. We've been around for around 35 years now and have an LGO alumni network of over 1,600 alumni. LGO is made up of 3 main pillars that are essential to our focus on industry-based research and industry innovation. So the School of Engineering, where most of our engineering departments are, Sloan, and our industry partner companies. So over the 24 months of the program, you will not only be integrated into Sloan as an MBA student and your engineering department, but you will also have many opportunities to interact with industry through LGO courses, action learning labs, our 6-month industry-based research internship, and through networking and recruiting, often from LGO alumni. You can see our list of current partner companies on our website, and we will have an upcoming webinar about our internships since they are one of the more unique experiences at LGO, and there's a lot more that we can say about them. Here is also a glimpse into how the curriculum is set up for LGO. So we begin in early June each year, where our new LGO class takes the LGO Summer Core, which is a mix of business, engineering, and leadership courses that are required for all LGO students. It's a pretty intense summer, but it prepares you well for the fall semester, where you will be fully integrated into Sloan to take their required core classes. So after you take a mix of business electives and your engineering courseworks for the rest of your semester. So you do your core required classes, and then it kind of opens up to electives and engineering coursework after that. As we will get to soon, coursework requirements vary by department and can change year by year. And the kind of last requirement for the MS is a thesis, which the thesis is always based on the internship project that you're doing for those 6 months. So that's just a very high level overview. If you have more questions about the internship, we have more information on the website. And again, there is an upcoming webinar where you can ask specific questions there as well. All right, so let's get into the weeds a bit about how the different engineering departments we work with are actually set up. I also want to note that when you apply to LGO, you apply with a single application that will be read by LGO, Sloan, and the specific engineering department you're applying to. So when selecting a department, it's important to consider if you have a suitable background for that department, but also what you want to do for the 2 years that you're at MIT. Each department is different in respects to their admissions process and course requirements. So you will want to prepare an application that is targeted at the specific department you are interested in. We're going to start with mechanical engineering. So each slide will be set up similarly so you can compare the different department requirements. And under the department name is the MIT classification system. So the MECI department is also known as Course 2 around campus, as everything is very number-based at MIT. So I'll also be mentioning the course names and the course numbers just so you can start getting used to how everything is organized. But MECI has historically been our largest department. In a class of around 50 students each year, MECI students will often make up 20 to 25 of those students, although we have been seeing other departments start to grow in recent years, so MECI has been closer to around 20 students in a class, which is still a pretty significant chunk. The mechanical engineering department is looking for students with a prior STEM degree, oftentimes a prior engineering degree, and a lot of our MECI students do have their undergrad degree in MECI, but what is also considered in admissions to this department is if a candidate has taken these 4 prerequisite classes, or most of these classes with substantial other STEM coursework that will provide a foundation for master's level coursework. So we do have students with other kinds of degrees outside of MECI be admitted to this department. And it's common to pivot into this area if your application can show both solid STEM coursework, potentially relevant work experience, and a clearly stated interest in what you want to focus in while you're at MIT and in the mechanical engineering department. The popular research areas for our students are these 4 listed on the slide. A lot of our students are in the manufacturing and product design area. Robotics and automation is a pretty popular subject as well. And then we've been seeing more students in the bioengineering focus. That's certainly a growing area. The core requirements for MECI include 3 graduate level courses within the department that are not cross-listed with Sloan or course 15. And that you take 1 elective that can be any graduate level engineering course. You can take a course outside of your department and still count it towards your mechanical engineering master's. MIT does work off of a unit system, so you are aiming to meet a certain number of units for all the various degree requirements. The course planning can seem very intimidating at first, but you will have an engineering advisor approving your choices, and you will also have a lot of support from the LGO program office, and will meet regularly with LGO academic advising staff who will help guide and inform your decisions. And these staff have been at LGO for a long time, so they know how various course choices have played out for other students in your various departments. So they have a lot of lived experience that they can share with each new class that comes in. The other bit of information that I have on these slides is a quick note about the internships associated with a specific department. Again, you will be able to learn about our internships in an upcoming webinar, but a very quick overview is that our internship matching process falls into 2 broad categories. One is open market internships, and the other is closed market internships. So open market internships means that is what the majority of each class is doing, and just means that you will have a list of potential internship projects open to you, and you will be able to explore these different projects through interviewing with a company and just thinking about your own priorities, and then you will eventually be matched with one of these projects that many of your other classmates are also looking at. Closed market matching is for our smaller departments with more niche focuses. And instead of interviewing for a lot of different projects, you'll work closely with the program office and a partner company to develop a project that is for you and your research focus. So there are different processes, largely based on what engineering your department is. So it's something just to keep in the back of your mind when you're thinking about different departments and thinking about the internship process. So currently our 2nd largest department is the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department, or Course 1. Civil is looking for applicants with a prior STEM degree or candidates with a significant amount of prior STEM coursework and a stated interest in line with their research areas. These are the most popular research areas that our students tend towards. And the civil department also has another area that's more focused on climate that we also occasionally see candidates apply for, but they usually fall into one of these three categories. What is important to keep in mind about this department and these research areas is that civil is one of our departments that will assign a specific faculty advisor to each student admitted into their department. So unlike MECI, where students are accepted into the department more broadly, civil students are only accepted when an advisor takes them on. So this decision is determined by fit and capacity. So you want to be clear on your application that when what your research area is and what faculty you would want to work with. This will help your application just end up in front of the right faculty and kind of give you the best chance of being admitted. The majority of students in civil tend to be focused on supply chain, which falls into the resilient systems and mobility research area. Though we also see a lot of students interested in sustainability, transportation, and infrastructure. The core and elective requirements are similar to MECI in that you must have core units from the civil courses and can take a course outside of the department for your elective. But as you can see, the unit requirements are a bit different. And civil students are also take part in the open market internship matching process. Our third department that we're going to cover today is the Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department, or Course 6. This is, as you might expect, a very rapidly growing department and always gets a lot of interest every year. The EECS department is looking for candidates with a prior STEM degree and who have significant knowledge of electrical engineering or computer science. So well, you don't necessarily need a degree in electrical engineering or computer science. You should have some prior coursework in these areas and have a strong programming foundation. Students in EECS can focus in a lot of different and sometimes overlapping research areas. So I encourage you to look at their website, or you can also look at our website to see the whole list of potential areas. But the ones listed here are what we tend to see a lot of. They recently restructured, so if you looked years ago at the EECS website, they do have new research areas, or at least the research areas are categorized differently now, so it's good to check on that again. In terms of coursework requirements, EECS is a bit more flexible in that there is no distinction between core and electives. You just need to take usually 4 EECS courses in line with your stated research interests and as approved by the department advisor. EECS students, like civil and MECI students, are also matched to their internship through the open market internship process. All right, so now we're getting into some of our smaller departments. Aero Astro, or Course 16, usually has 2 to 5 students in a class. And like civil, as a department where a faculty member has to take on a student during the admissions process. So it's especially important to be clear about what your research interest is. Aero Astro is looking for candidates with a prior STEM degree, and previous experience in Aero Astro is not required, but is certainly a plus on an application. We also strongly encourage that a technical recommendation come from an academic source for this department. So that's just something that we know this department is looking for in particular, so it's always good to have if you can manage it. Aero Astro also tends to admit most of its LGO students in round 2. So even if you apply in round 1, don't be surprised if you end up waitlisted into round 2. It's very common for this department and doesn't necessarily reflect the strength of your application. This department's coursework is also a bit flexible in the sense that you can usually take more than one engineering course outside Aero Astro and still count it towards your master's degree. This is also a department that has closed market internships. So the program staff will work with you and our partner companies to source and develop a project that matches your background specifically. So it's a different process, but is something that we have to do for our more niche department areas. And Aero Astro is certainly one of those areas. So nuclear science and engineering, or course 22, is our newest department. And we have a total of 4 students in that department and have not yet had any of them graduate. So this post-careers category is what we're anticipating them to do, but we don't actually have any data yet about what our NSE students will go on to do once they graduate. But NSE is looking for a STEM background of some kind, either a degree or a significant STEM coursework. And they are primarily looking for candidates who have strong physics foundation. So having a lot of physics coursework will just prepare you for this master's degree. A background in nuclear science is not required, but is certainly a plus to an application. The course structure looks a bit different for NSE in that students are required to take modules and classes along specializations for their core classes and have a lighter unit count for the electives. And like civil and Aero Astro, an advisor is assigned during the admissions process. And since NSE is smaller and has the more niche research focuses, they are also a closed market internship department. Chemical engineering, also known as course 10, is another small department with closed market internships. And our students in this department tend to focus on biotech or biomedical areas of research. This is a department that is looking for candidates specifically who have a prior chemical engineering degree or something very similar. So a degree in bioengineering, biomedical engineering, or biochemistry. Previous biotech work experience and or research is a plus, but not necessarily required. The chemical engineering department is one of the less flexible course structures because you have more limited choices for the core courses and can only take electives within the Chem-E department. This isn't necessarily a bad thing since Chem-E's tend to more easily integrate into their department because they are taking all these required courses with other Chem-E students. But it is a kind of different consideration when you're planning your course load. And finally, we have the Operations Research Center, which is technically umbrellaed under Sloan, so is considered a course 15 area, but we treat it like our other engineering departments. The ORC is again one of our small departments, so only 1 or 2 students per year. It is one of the less flexible departments in terms of admissions, timeline, and course load. So most of our ORC students have extensive math and programming backgrounds. They're looking for prior degrees in applied mathematics, industrial engineering, computer science, or statistics. And applicants should have completed high-level math and statistics courses, and ideally some optimization coursework before they apply, and should also have strong programming experience. Like Aero Astro, this is another department that we particularly strongly encourage having the technical recommendation come from an academic source. So an undergraduate advisor or a faculty member you worked closely with and who can speak to your technical skills is what we're looking for when we're asking for an academic source. Something else to note about this department is that an admissions decision will only come in round 2 due to the department admissions timeline. So if you do end up applying round 1 to ORC, you will either receive a rejection decision or you can be waitlisted into round 2 to hear a final decision in early March. So there's not really any reason to apply in round 1 to ORC because you will only hear a decision in the round 2 timeline. So that's just something to be aware of for that department. And as you can see for the class requirements, You will need to take more courses than the average LGO student and are limited in your course selection to a mix of these specific classes that are listed here. But this department does have open market internship selection. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are interested in supply chain, you should also consider the civil and environmental engineering department because that's where all of our supply chain students actually live. So there is some crossover with the civil department and ORC, and that's something to be aware of when you're kind of considering which department that you think you want to apply to. Okay, so hopefully that gave a broader idea of how the different departments work and what students are doing in them. So we will now move to the student panel so that we can actually hear from students who are in these departments about their own experience and their thought process when they were thinking about engineering departments. So I will now have the LGO 23s introduce themselves. So if Tony, you want to start.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Tony Gariba. I am on LGO 23. As Sharona had mentioned, I am in the mechanical engineering department. And prior to LGO, I was working at a biotech startup. I was in the industry for about 6 years, started my career as a process engineer, kind of moved on to the ranks, and I ended up as an operations manager.
Great, thank you. UK. Oh, I don't think we can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is UK from my last name, it's a nickname. I started out in biochemistry and computer science as an undergrad. After that, I worked at Reagan Institute, which is physically located on MIT campus. I did biomedical research, a lot of work evaluating HIV vaccines, and then afterwards, I just knew computer science was my true love, came to EECS, and was a game changer since then.
Great, and Miles.
Hi everyone, I'm Miles Kurtz, also in LGO 23 in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. Prior to LGO, I spent just over 3 years in management consulting and did a lot of work in first and last mile optimization, which is how I found my way to LGO. This summer and fall, I'm interning at Target. So I'm actually in Minneapolis right now visiting their headquarters. My other update is that I'm talking to Jen right now. She's trying to log in, and I think that she just has to make sure that she's on her MIT email instead of her Boeing email. So stay tuned for Jen.
Yes, yeah, we're just gonna wait on our last student. And yes, she probably does need her MIT email to access this webinar specifically. But when she manages to make in, I'll make sure that we introduce her. But in the meantime, how did you guys end up deciding on your engineering department when you were thinking about applying to LGO? Were there other departments you were thinking about, and what kind of were the deciding factors for you?
I can start. So I actually got a lot of help from the LGO program office. So highly recommend if you're deciding, feel free to reach out. I know Sharona helped me a lot during that time. So I was in between bioengineering, which was one of the options at the time, which I understand is no longer an option. I was in between that, chemical engineering, and mechanical engineering. I was interested in chemical engineering, but inevitably, I think what ended up happening was I didn't have all the prerequisites for it. I was a material science and engineering undergrad. So it was easier for me I think I had to take one course as a prerequisite for MECI, and I did that through edX. And that was the easier path. And then when I looked at the coursework as well, I think there was a little bit more flexibility within MECI to take electives. I was able to take one elective through the bioengineering department, which I actually ended up really liking. And then there were also some bio-related courses under MECI that appealed a little bit more to me, given my material science background.
I think choosing a department is very similar to me as it was for Tony. So my undergrad is also in material science and engineering. And so I was between Civi and MECI. And so I did what Tony did. So I knew that I was interested in sustainability. And I also looked at the course offerings, which I would really recommend that you do. So Civi, like MECI, has a lot of flexibility in internships being open market. You could almost apply to any internship that comes up. And then in courses, there's a little bit more restriction in Civi because a lot of courses are cross-listed with management. So they don't count for civil engineering, which I would look at. And I'll actually drop the course list in the chat. But I think it was really, what are my goals, what am I passionate about, and what matches my background?
My story is sort of similar to Miles. So undergrad, I had a background in biochemistry and computer science, like I mentioned earlier. Afterwards, I worked at the intersection of both. So I was writing code for a biomedical institute. So I needed my background in like biochemistry to understand biology of things, but I also need my technical skills in computer science to be actually know how to program and make sense of DNA. And when I was applying to LGO, it actually was just crystal clear for me that ECS was just the only fit within the department. I guess I could have been civil, but I just wasn't as interested. So, and then another thing that's very important for me was just gauging what the future would look like. And I know we'll get towards like some technological revolution, AI or whatnot. And so that was important for me, like settling in, and it was the right decision. We'll see.
Great, thank you. And we have our last student who's from Aero Astro. So Jen, if you want to introduce yourself and then maybe share with us why you chose the department that you chose to apply to.
Sure. Sorry I'm late joining. I'm currently on internship and I had to find signal strength for my phone to connect. So yeah, I guess Jen Pandoff, I'm in Aero Astro. I previously worked at Rolls-Royce for the last 4 years as a control systems engineer before joining LGO. And my undergrad was not in aerospace engineering. I did it in mechanical engineering at Virginia Tech. And because I went into the aerospace industry, I fell in love with that. And that's kind of what I knew I wanted to do post LGO. I wanted to stay in aerospace. And so it made more sense for me to pursue an aerospace engineering master's over a mechanical engineering master's. I will say it kind of like narrows you in on maybe some of the opportunities that LGO offers. You're more directed towards Aero projects in a sense. But I will say that like I was very, to what Miles pointed out, I was very keen on taking aerospace courses, and given the degree requirements, that's kind of where I belonged. And so I think that's kind of what drove me to choose aerospace engineering, was knowing I wanted to stay in the aerospace industry. But I wouldn't say that like maybe doing MECI would, I think that could also be another option, but I would echo what Miles said, is like, look at the professors you might want to take classes with, because I think that's really the largest value is that MIT has to offer from a technical side, is taking classes with professors that like you probably would never interact with otherwise. And I think that's kind of been like the biggest thing for me, is getting to take classes with all the professors that I kind of read up on before I applied to MIT.
Great. Yeah, so thinking about the opportunities that you have because you are doing the dual degree, what has been your favorite experience or maybe class in the engineering department that you're in so far?
I can go first on this one. My favorite class, I think, has been a design elective based out of course one, actually. And the reason I like that class in particular, it's course 1125, one dot course one. So 125 under this course one department. And the reason I like that class is because there was just a mixed engineering discipline in the class. So you have people from course two, course one, course six taking the class. So different, like people from civil, mechanical, ECS taking the class. And it kind of reminded me of my LGO summer, which was unique in that you had people of different backgrounds taking one class, but then was solving one common goal. And it's kind of like how teams work and it's how the workforce works. So I think I liked it a lot just because of the multifacetedness of the class.
My favorite engineering course was not a civil course. I took a course in the spring called Fashion Engineering, which I'm famous for in the LGO community, but was actually a fascinating class because you don't think about how fabrics are knitted. I think it's something that we take for granted, and it had a lot of elements of sustainability and like how fabric is manufactured. It was like a great opportunity to meet students from across departments. So there were material scientists, civil engineers, mechanical engineers, all thinking about different properties of materials. And it was also just fun. I was interviewing for internships at the time, and so I was like able to talk about this in my interview with Nike and how shoes are made and how fabrics are made. So that's like part of the fun of being at MIT is that there's some like kind of out there different courses that you could take. And it also like was more conceptual than like super mathematical and rigorous, which was just fun for me.
I'll go next. My favorite course that I've taken is Technology Road Mapping by Ali Dweck. And I took that my first fall. And it was, I don't want to say it's like overtly difficult, but we got to pair up with other people, and kind of what Miles was saying was like getting kind of exposure to all the different groups at MIT. That class also had a lot of like cross-disciplinary or cross registration. There was some people from Harvard in that class. There was people from like the Sloan Fellows organization. So it was kind of interesting to see all of our projects come together and people's different takes. That class was kind of cool because it was like from the engineering side, the intersection of like business strategy and like technical development. So I learned a lot about like, okay, what's like a good framework for road mapping, like new technologies and kind of like thinking about it as like a systems thinking. So it kind of helped me shape like, oh, is this something that I would want to do longer term? And then I think a lot of the value in the classes you take are also the people you interact with. I'd kind of echo what Miles said. I will say I did take it with other LGOs. So to an extent, I did have some support system in the class. And that was also really fun, was getting to work with LGOs from different departments that actually ended up being in my class. That was really cool.
So for me, the most exciting class that I've taken is actually a class that's offered through the bioengineering department. So as a Mechie, you're allowed to take at least one class, or only one class really, outside of your discipline. So I chose that class. It's called Fundamentals of Drug Development, which is a really exciting class. It is a team-based project at the end where you essentially figure out an unmet need and then design a drug and then discuss how you're going to take this drug, what experiments are you going to conduct in order to prove its principles, and then how are you going to design the clinical trials. And then the other exciting part to this is during the semester, the classes are mostly seminar based. So the professors bring in different experts from the industry that have been working in other biotechs or have started other biotechs to talk to the class about their journey or maybe a challenge that they've had with one drug that they're developing. So it's a neat way to really build your network, and there's not really a much more exciting place for biotech than being here in Cambridge. And these speakers are so willing and so eager to come to the class and talk about their journey. So that's really been an exciting part for me.
So this has been touched on a couple times, and you've all mentioned that you're currently on internship, but how has the engineering coursework or, finding an advisor, how has that shaped your internship experience so far?
I guess I can go first. Um, I think it's interesting because your internship doesn't necessarily have to align with the coursework that you took, but I am constantly like thinking through all the frameworks that I've learned in all of the classes to help me like attack the problems that I'm seeing, or understand the problem. So, and the internship that I'm at is kind of more of like a more vague topic, um, versus maybe all of our internships vary, I think, from like what the company wants to get out of the project. And so I think that's the kind of cool thing is, based on the coursework I've taken, whether that's like kind of narrow it in or kind of a broad scope, I took things that I was interested in, but I'm still finding that, like, say, a business course where I learned a strategic framework, being able to use that to kind of think through some like technical problem, to talk to stakeholders while I'm on internship has been kind of interesting um, to kind of go through. And I guess that's what I would say is like my coursework. I took what I was interested in, and then that's kind of helped me indirectly on my internship. Although I think most of what I'm doing on internship does directly relate to my coursework. So for perspective, I'm interning with Boeing, and I'm looking at model-based systems engineering, which is highly relevant to some of the systems engineering coursework that I've taken while at MIT. But I would say that some of the problems that you see aren't just technically based, but are also organizationally based. So thinking through all the business frameworks we get as LGOs has also been kind of helpful to understand like the bigger picture while we're on internship. I don't know if anyone else would echo that from their internship experiences.
I could jump in. So I'm interning at Target, and my civil engineering advisor is Franz Ulm, who runs the Concrete Sustainability Hub at MIT. And Target doesn't do so much work in concrete. I think there's like sidewalks outside of their stores. And so there's like part of this, and then you also have a business advisor. And so I meet more regularly with my business advisor. And I think it just depends because civil engineers can interview for, like I said, almost any internship. They're also like, how much or does this not fit with your advisor's research? And so I've actually met with some other advisors who are really closely tied to LGO. There's a professor named Sean Willems who you'll hear students rave about frequently. And so I just like message him and we'll set up a Zoom conversation. And I think that on internships, some students meet with their advisors weekly and some meet with them much less frequently. But it ties back to the coursework, especially the LGO core has been super useful in the work that I'm doing with Target and setting up optimization models. And then just checking in with advisors for guidance and making sure that they're comfortable with the rigor of my work because they'll ultimately sign off on the thesis.
Right, now, just like you, I think there's some kind of effort that goes into trying to make sure the choice of advisor fits with the project and their research interests, because that's the way you sort of like derive value for the company and for your advisor, and also build on your relationships. So for me, I'm interning at Applied Molecular Genetics, Amgen. They're based out of Thousand Oaks, and I've been able to visit those sites. My core project is to try to figure out what the pattern of unsafe events are at the company and how to predict those so that they can prevent them before they do occur. So far, I think the most impactful experience I've had with regards to my advisor was my my EECS advisor, Dwayne Bonin. Professor Bonin flew into Thousand Oaks where I had to meet with some execs to give a midterm presentation, like a progress report on how the internship has been going so far. And it was almost like I was speaking gospel at the event because my professor was just there, and I didn't have to like sort of like show a lot of the rigor behind what I did. I had to just present results. And because he was there in the room, it felt like that credibility was already there, planned beforehand. And it was the first time I realized, whoa, an advisor, choosing the right advisor, can be very impactful, not just for how you do the project and how much you get out of completing the project, but also like that long-term relationship, and not just in meeting, but now we're like good friends who talk about pretty much everything. And I can see myself even after school, keeping in touch with Dwayne Bonin, and this is also true for Roy, but Roy couldn't fly in for this particular meeting, and Roy is my management advisor. So I think you should consider the professor you want to work with, because it's from that department you sort of speak and choose who will become your advisor, and that's very critical for your personal leadership journey, even throughout the program and even beyond the program.
So similar to UK, I'm also at Amgen, and my project is in their engineering group. So looking at standardizing the design of the single-use disposable items that they use in manufacturing their drugs. And in terms of that, one of the issues they've encountered during the pandemic is the supply of these materials. So because they have so many of these materials that they have to source, they've actually had issues getting it from their suppliers. So one thing that they're looking at in order to kind of be more proactive in their approach is to standardize the design of these assemblies so that they have fewer assemblies that they have to source, and they can order more of them, because if they can standardize it throughout the different sites, then they can have buying power and economies of scale. So they're looking at, one, how to standardize that, how should they decide the standard design. So for my mechanical engineering advisor, I have Professor Dan Frey, who is part of the MIT Design Lab. So he's really been helpful in guiding me on the frameworks of how do you think of design, how do you manage the different stakeholders and their different considerations for picking a standard. And then the other advisor that I have is Professor Graves. He is from the management side and has done a lot of work with supply chain. So he's also been very helpful in considering, okay, how do we build supply chain resiliency? How do you harp on that point in reference to the project, which is standardization?
Yeah, I'm seeing some questions in the Q&A about where you can express your interest on the application, about advisors, about faculty and classes and research areas. And that it really falls into the LGO statement of purpose, which is a very short essay. It's only 300 words, but that is where is the best place to kind of express your excitement and what you want to accomplish while you're at MIT for those 2 years, and specifically at LGO as an integrated program. So talking about the engineering department and why you're applying to that engineering department can go in that area. But I'm wondering, for our students, do you have any advice when tackling the dual degree application? How did you kind of split your application between MBA, the engineering department you are applying to, and then also LGO as kind of its own dedicated program?
I can jump in. So yeah, okay. Question is, how did we tackle kind of going about our application? I think the Aero Astro department is a little unique, and so maybe I'll kind of define that process for me. So there's two ways in which you can apply to LGO. You can apply through the School of Business, or you can apply as you're applying through your engineering department. So I actually applied through the Aero Astro department, and then tacked on wanting to go to LGO. And when you're applying to the Aero Astro department, they they look at your admissions and they like pair you with your advisor upon your admission. And so when I was crafting my essays, I looked really hard at who might be my advisor if I were to come into Aero Astro, and then specifically what I was going to get out of the Aero Astro department. And then I also looked at, okay, well then if I were to do LGO, how does that help? And there were some things that like I saw from my previous work experience that like I was passionate about and I wanted to change. For me specifically, I'm really interested in, you know, pushing the aerospace industry into the next century. I think the way we do things right now is like very slow, very cumbersome, at least from like a big aerospace company. And so that's kind of what I wrote about, right? Like how what I was going to learn at MIT was going to help me change or enact some sort of change post MIT. And so I specifically called out those things. So I called out coursework I wanted to take. I called out the advisor I wanted to take at MIT. And then I also specifically looked at, okay, well, how does LGO fit into that? And what is LGO giving me that maybe like just doing an aerospace master's wasn't going to fulfill? And that's kind of how I crafted pretty much my entire application. I kind of thought through those things and then wrote about it, and had multiple people edit it.
So for me, I applied through the MBA side, so the Sloan application, and we had to write the cover letter for admission into LGO, and then the statement of purpose. So for the cover letter, I made sure to highlight why I was interested in LGO specifically. So I talked about my previous experience, which was already in operation, and how I intended to grow within the operation side, and why LGO was a really good fit for me. And then I also talked about a story where I was able to show some leadership skills that I've been able to demonstrate while I was still working, to have a little bit more meat on in terms of talking about my previous background in that cover letter. And then for the statement of purpose, it was very similar to what Jen had mentioned, why I was specifically interested in mechanical engineering. I had already done the legwork of looking at the classes that I would be interested in taking. So I talked about those certainly. I think MECI is a little bit different in that you don't necessarily get assigned an advisor as an LGO. So I didn't mention which advisor I would want to be assigned to, but I did mention professors that I would be excited to take classes with, or maybe do some research on the side.
I would.
For me, on this topic, I've always been biased in the sense that I've just thought just apply. And just apply is as I think about my time at LGO 23, and everyone, all my peers, it's kind of hard to imagine that there's a formula for application because everyone is just so different. Like, and I say that in a very genuine way. In my case, for example, I talked about researchers or professors that might be paired with. I think maybe it's important to also mention what partner companies you care about, because ultimately you'll be paired with one of them. It's probably more important to talk about the intersection between the three major stakeholders: engineering, Sloan, and the LGO program itself. All these things are important, and there's nothing more important than just applying. You know, just settle down, reflect, care about the engineering department you're actually applying to, and know how this is going to fit into life after MIT. So if you can look long term, that's going to be awesome. And just apply, just do it.
I'll add briefly. Don't forget, I think like the mission statement's in there. I hadn't heard mentioned it, like principled, innovative leaders who advance the practice of management. And so really think about that, like why is LGO different? Sure, we're engineers, but we also are earning MBAs and have this strategic business mindset. And I think the ability to tie all of that together is what sets us apart. So it's like, I'm not, like I study engineering, I can go be an engineer, but really an engineering leader who can set a strategic direction and then execute it at a level that involves data and a lot of technical thinking, which I would say non-LGO graduates might not be able to do as well.
Great, thank you. Kind of thinking also about, I want to clarify that, like, as you probably heard from these students, you don't need to reach out to faculty during the admissions process. Just mentioning them and being aware of their research areas on the application is enough for us to kind of gauge where to send your application and where you'll probably spend your 2 years if you are admitted to the program. So you don't need to do that. Just, making sure that your research, that the research that you've done is apparent in the application is always a good thing to make sure you're communicating. But kind of shifting back to the program experience, how have you guys managed the course load? Because it is different than a regular MBA student. So how has the balance of work life been for you? And if you have any kind of wise learnings that you would want to share from that experience.
So it can be tough to balance. I'd say there's like a few wise learnings. The first is that we're adults at this point and have a lot of things going on. So compared to undergrad, it's like if school or classes aren't your number one priority, that's okay. I think the second part is that the program office has data on classes. And so it's like when we look at the list of all the civil engineering classes that I can take, there are some classes, there's like a class that's like advanced ecological dynamics and modeling. And I was like, how cool would this class be? And they were like, you can take this class, but it's like really in depth with like linear programming and all these models. And so I think there's like a subset of classes that LGOs tend to gravitate towards and take together and take year after year. And so you're often not the only LGO in a class. So you lean on each other. And I think you select classes that are really in line and have the right level of technical focus for what we want to get out of it. And so I'd say that's like the other part of managing it and how, for example, for me, that meant taking fashion engineering.
Yeah, I would echo what Miles said around knowing what you want to get out of the class. I definitely took this is just like undergrad approach when I first got here. And I think that's the wrong approach. I mean, it kind of feels similar, right? You're going back to classes, you're not working, not getting a paycheck. But yeah, I think that's kind of the key is understanding why you're taking the classes you are. And I think the LGO curriculum in the summer it's like pretty clear. But as you get to craft your own course schedule, I think it becomes like a little bit more on you to kind of manage that. And I would also echo what Miles said around the LGO community. Everyone's pretty willing to help you. And also like keeping you level set. I don't think I've taken a class yet where I haven't had at least one LGO. But that was also by my design, right? Where I wanted someone potentially that I knew where I could lean on outside of meeting new people. And that they could also understand the workload, because you will find that we take much larger workloads than many other graduate students on campus. Not saying that engineering students don't take a lot, they're doing a lot of research as well. It's just a different type of stress that we're under. But yeah, following kind of what Miles said around we're all adults, I think the best advice I got when I was entering the program was like, there's like 5 things that you need, which is like sleep, social, fitness, if you want to prioritize that, the learning. And then there was one more, I can't remember. And it was like, you will end up sacrificing 1 or 2 of those. But it's up to you to figure out which ones of those will be, and it'll probably not be the same every single week. Some other like guidance that has really helped me is been like setting up boundaries on weekends. So, and also like being willing to communicate that. So like if you don't want to work on Saturdays because that needs to be your day off, like tell the teams that you're on. And most of the time, like you end up working together to figure that out. And I think that's also the part of the great learning experience of LGOs. Is we're improving our leadership skills and how to work with others. And part of that is like the fun of actually going through the program. So.
The only thing I think Miles and Jen really covered a lot of it. The only thing I would mention is, so as part of the MBA class, you're assigned to a core team in the fall, and you take all the core classes together with your core team, and just inevitably you have a lot more on your plate is what tends to happen than the rest of your team. So kind of what Jen mentioned, setting up boundaries and then communicating that, hey, like this is my workload, this is where I'm at. And actually, like most people are pretty understanding, or they're going to work with you. Okay, so if you can't contribute as much on this particular assignment, is there a week that's a little bit more open for you that we can shift the work and you will take the lead on that assignment? Usually that is what tends to happen in terms of classes. And then also, it's just a trade-off in terms of the social scene. You're not able to participate in as many things, as many clubs that others are able to do. But I also know personally that I am getting a lot out of being able to do the dual degree. So I'm willing to forego some of the things that other MBAs might be enjoying. So yeah, it is a little bit of a different life. But yeah, I think you find ways to still integrate with the class and integrate with the MBA cohort.
I have nothing to add other than to say that my classmates, whatever they said about balancing and prioritizing is key. And the only way you can, one way you can hold yourself accountable to that is to maybe do yourself a favor and reflect before you start the program. Hopefully your applications are successful. Some of you get in, that's just how it works. And those who get in, I think if you take the careful act of reflection seriously, and you know your priorities, when it comes down to making that decision and you reflect wherever you wrote what you care about, it'll be easier to say no to things that you think are cool, like sleeping, because they're just not your priority. Or it'll be easier to say yes to things like social life, because you wrote it down somewhere, because yes, it is your priority. So try to reflect, try to write that down somewhere so that you can hold yourself accountable later when you have to make decisions based.
Great. I think that is all very important advice just for any grad student, but especially for LGOs who do take on a lot when they arrive at our campus. But thank you. I just want to say thank you to our students for joining us and for sharing us. We're about at time. Just going to share my screen quickly once again, just to plug that our application is now open for this year. So you can start an application and get a look at all of those essays that we mentioned. These are our deadlines for this year. If you have any more questions, I recommend checking out the website. It has a lot of information. We have other upcoming events with more students and different topics. And please feel free to reach out to us at lgo@mit.edu if you have any questions about engineering fit, engineering choices, or other questions about the program. So thank you all for joining us again today. I hope you all have a great rest of your day.